right. Hi, everyone. Thank you. Let's do that again. Hi, everyone. Woo! I've been checking in with folks, and I'm like, how you doing? And they're like, well, it's 3 o'clock on a Sunday. And I'm like, I know. But we are on the home stretch, and I really want us to bring our energy to this last session because I'm really, really thrilled about what's coming. But first, you know it's coming. We've got some engagement. Let's see if I can point it in the right direction. It's turned off again. Okay. Get that mentee out. Get those phones out. Hit that heart. I'm not quite sure if we'll get to, 276 or whatever we did last time, but we are rocking it. We're a full house, which is wonderful. I have to say, while you all are doing that, it's been really wonderful to connect with the presenters as they are finishing up their sessions and telling us how attentive you were, how engaged, the takeaways that you took physically in deliverables, whether it be an item or hopefully knowledge that you'll bring into the next session. So we're going to ask a question about that. So I want you to be thinking about, what you took away. But first off, we're going to do some real-time assessment here, real-time feedback. How's it going? Okay, we've got 3 questions. We want to know how the food was, how the workshops were, how's the day so far? So we've got a scale that is very academically rigorous from meh to pretty great, okay? Those are the 1 through 5 Likert scales. Or I think it's 0 through 5. Wonderful. Okay, we've got some good feedback on the workshops. Awesome. The day so far. The food, you know what? You know what I'm going to equate the food to is that we have such a fantastic LSC catering department. It is impossible to top it, right? Yes. Awesome. All right, so the next question is just share a takeaway, right? A takeaway from a session that you attended. So what is one piece? This is helpful for us, right? You'll get more opportunity to provide feedback as it's going. Ooh, go Bengals, Narcan, confidence, listen, empathy. Hey, scrollers, I'm going to need my AV assist. Oh, humanity, recycling is stressful. Money is a tool. Listen attentively can help save lives. Yes, so much around that. Buy the $7 latte. I learned so much. It was baller. Awesome. Bar on the works. Universal design should be at the forefront. Better connections. I learned what to do in an event of an overdose. I like having my emotional support people I went with. Listen, don't OD on drugs. Yeah. And if Narcan's there. Listen intentionally. I need to buy stocks, right? Is that what some folks came away with? Harm reduction isn't enabling. Exposure, believe. Anti-Semitism is very real and needs to be addressed in a competent way. Use your strengths. We need to support our Jewish students better. Public speaking is about finding your purpose. I'm just really pulling out. There's no method to this madness. So it's really neat because we can share this data outwards. And so if you're interested, we'll have folks there. Hopefully you were able to scan the QR codes in your workshop attendance. But you also notice that if you're an employee, you are registered through the Bridge or My Learning platform, and you will be marked as attended through that as well. So thank you so much. It is my absolute honor to welcome up our closing keynote speaker. First, I'm going to tell you a little bit about her. So Dr. Blanche Hughes received her bachelor's degree from Earlham College, a master's of education degree in student affairs, and doctorate degree in sociology from this very own Colorado State University. She's currently in her 15th year as the vice president for student affairs at Colorado State University. Let's give it up for that. In this role, she works with a division that includes 21 departments that collaborate with other units in university community, providing support for our students and staff to be successful. Dr. Hughes teaches a first-year undergraduate seminar course, as well as teaches and advises in the Student Affairs and Higher Education graduate program. She is also a member of the President's Leadership Team. Before becoming vice president, Blanche spent 6 years as the associate vice president for student affairs, 11 years as the director of Black Student Services at Colorado State University, and also served as a professor of the Sociology Department at Pikes Peak Community College. One of those years as chair of the department. Blanche is married to Wayne Hughes, and they have 4 children. 2 are alums of CSU and 5 grandchildren. Blanche, welcome up.
Hi. Had a long day today, but invigorating, right? All right. Well, I know I'm the last one, so I will, hopefully I will keep you awake for a little bit longer. Well, when I heard about this theme of today's conference, planting seeds today to shape tomorrow, so I started to think about, what would I want to talk about? And I said, I immediately thought about, what seeds have been planted in the past that shape what we do or have today? And I thought about how these seeds have changed over time, how that change is sometimes welcomed and sometimes not, and what we expected, and sometimes is very different and challenging, from what we imagined. And sometimes we plant seeds for the future having no idea what will become of it, if anything, right? So I thought, okay, let's start out with trying to maybe look at some past trends, things that have happened over time. It might be kind of fun to just name a couple of things. So I thought about 20 years ago, because I wanted to be inclusive of the more senior folks in the room, and 10 years ago. Now, I know that 20 years ago, some of you are going to say I wasn't born yet, and that's all right. You can keep that to yourself. But you might have been 1 or 2 years old. But still, the changes that have happened between 20 years and 10 years, I think some of those might be a little interesting. So I just pulled out a couple. So starting in 2003, the first camera phone came out. And, today, none of us can imagine not having a camera phone, much less a smartphone with us all the time. And why I picked this one out is because I have a clear memory of, I think I was around 10 years old, so this was in the 1960s. And my mother was on the telephone, like a real telephone, talking to her friends, because this is what they did. She sat in a chair, she had a stool, and she would sit for hours talking on the phone to her friends. And she would say, yeah, we read someplace that they're working on a telephone where you could see the people that you were talking to. And she and her friend thought that was the most ridiculous thing in the world. How are they going to do that? That makes no sense. That's never going to happen. And I remember thinking that seemed pretty ridiculous too, but also looking at my mom and thinking, yeah, you probably don't want that to happen because, the way you look talking on the phone, I don't think other people are going to want to see that. That's what 10-year-olds do, right? But I never thought that would happen. And now, oh my gosh, I think it was wonderful. Friendster, anybody heard of that? I never heard of this before, but it was the first social media channel that was launched. It's nothing like TikTok and Insta channels of today, but that's when people started to think about how do we do that. And then iTunes was released. And now iTunes, you still had to search for a song or an album and then purchase it on iTunes. But so there was no Spotify to compile customized playlists. Now, I will have to tell you that iTunes, even 20 years ago, I still like to go to the record store and buy an album and really a cassette, but they didn't have a whole lot of those even 20 years ago, but I still have my cassettes. That just seemed like the real way to do it. Now, in 2013, 10 years ago, HD TV, high definition TV, was brand new, and we all loved it because it had a clear picture, but they were huge and weighed like 200 or 300 pounds to get the TV into your house. And now today, we can watch TV on our phone, on our on our phones, right? Anywhere. Now, some of you might not know this. Macklemore and Ryan Lewis released the Thrift song. Anybody remember that song? Yeah? And that made thrift shopping extremely popular, particularly among young people, right? But the most important part of that is that he was here at CSU that very year and performed the song on the campus. He was here that fall. We booked him before he got famous. And he got famous before he came, but he was already booked, so he had to come, and we didn't have to pay him. And it was awesome. And then there was a famous dance that became hugely popular in 2013. Everybody was doing it. It was all over media. And does anybody know what that dance was? What was it? No, the Harlem Shake. Now, if we had time, I was going to have some of you all come up and demonstrate it, but we don't have time, so we'll move on. But anyway, so we get used to something like the telephone. And I mean, we were excited when you could get your private line on a telephone. They used to have party lines where several other families would share the same telephone number with you. That was really inconvenient. But you could get some interesting conversations. You knew a lot about people, your neighbors, if you wanted to. And now, look where we're at, right? And we get used to something, and then these new seeds, if we want to call them, whether they're inventions, ideas, different ways of knowing and doing things that emerge from cultures that weren't included in the mainstream culture over time. Like, so we've learned so many things and new stuff and say, why don't we try that? Or here's what we need. And that has really shaped, right, where we are today. And that's important. So while these trends were good, and they really impacted millions and millions of people and our way of doing things, I also then said, but let's focus it more a little bit. And I began to think about what are the seeds that we have planted in the past that we benefit from today here at CSU, and particularly in the Lory Student Center, that continue to bloom. And the biggest example I thought of was prior to 1997, the cultural centers were all over campus. So El Centro was the only cultural center, that the ethnic racial culture center that was in the student center. Now the Black African American Cultural Center, which was called Black Student Services back then, but I'll use the current name for all of them because the names change. It and the Asian Pacific American Cultural Center was in Ellsworth Hall, which is now a parking lot, but talk about change. But we were in there. And then Native American Cultural Center was in Student Services. So we were all spread out. And there was a group, we still used to have it, we're bringing it back. It's called the PMSEC, President's Multicultural Student Advisory Committee. It was started by Dr. Yates, who was our president at the time, because he wanted to get more input on how to make this campus more inclusive and more welcoming for our marginalized students. So we met, and we met once a month. He came to the meetings. We had 5 vice presidents at the time. They were required to come to the meetings, and he would ask the students, what is it you need? And the cultural center directors, for which I was one at that time, were also required to go to the meeting, but it was the students talking to the president. And they said, we want to be in one place because we want to recognize that we want to do more things together, and it's too hard when we're spread out all over campus. People don't know where to find us. We want to be on campus. So Dr. Yates said, well, why don't you all get together of your group, do some research, and come back and let us know what does that look like for you. So Greeley, and they still do, they have houses on campus. Do you want to have a cultural house? Different campuses do it differently. what do you want? So they went back, the small group of students, with some help from us as directors, but it was really them. And they came up with a suggestion, and they said, we want to stay on campus. We think it's really important that we be at the center of campus. All of us want to be in the student center. And so that was their report. They did a great job, and I will never forget, Dr. Yates looked over to the two vice presidents in charge, the vice president of Student Affairs at the time, and the vice president of Operations, and looked at them and said, make it so. And we were like, what? What? And so I don't know how they did it, because that's before I had to care about money and stuff. But we moved over. And so in 1997, just before the flood, actually, we moved here. They built on to create a space for Native American Cultural Center, and also for APAC. Black African American Cultural Center was in like 312, 314. They remodeled those rooms. So we were all here together. And that was the beginning, and that was huge. That was the seed that students, that you all that are students here had that idea and made it happen. And then our populations grew. And we said it's not only the cultural centers, but all of the cultural and resource centers need to be in the student center, because we need to acknowledge the intersectionality of our groups, and we need to be at a place where we're the center of campus, where everybody can see us. We're not over here in a corner in the student center. We are central. And Mike Ellis and his team and the university came together, and now we have what we have now. So in 2014, that seed then grew to now having us and having those centers in the center, and everybody in the student center where everybody knows where they are. How cool was that, right? And so that's a great example, and there's so many more, but that's one I wanted to focus it on. One, the power and the seeds that all of you all, that students have, but how that led to where we are today. And now we're talking about what's next. What's next? So that is a great example. And what I hope that you all have heard today, and I'm sure what you might know, but if you don't, I'm going to say it anyway. You know, all of us have the ability and should plant seeds, right? All of us. Everybody in this room can do that. You don't have to have a big title. You don't have to have a leadership role. You don't need a lot of money. You don't have to be a high-tech inventor or a scientist or a professional researcher, teacher, faculty to plant seeds for a better tomorrow. Everyone in this room plants seeds every single day, just by the work that you do. So, for example, some of you in this room may be first-generation students, either first generation right now or were a first-generation student, first person to go to college in your family. You've planted some big seeds. We know that from research, that first-generation students that go to college, they go back and they impact their siblings, their family, their neighbors, their community to say, you did that. Tell us what it's like, right? And can we do that? That's a huge seed that you plant. And all of you who work here in the Student Center, all of you, the programs that you do, keeping the LSC clean and comfortable, feeding people, the services you provide, the partnerships that you have, all that you do every day, you are planting seeds. Somebody's having a hard day. You're working with them. You're helping them to say, here's what you need to do. Sometimes really smiling at somebody when maybe nobody has smiled the whole day changes how they feel. That they say, okay, maybe I can make it to the next day because somebody cared about me. That's what you do in this building every single day. You plant new ideas. You create new programs with the hope that they will help shape the future. You get to give input and things, and changes are made because of your experiences and what you do and what you see every day. You all make a difference. And if you take a moment to think about the impact that you have, and in the future, even be more intentional about it, because sometimes you just do it, you probably don't think about what I'm doing is important, what I do make a difference. I'm just working, I'm just serving food, or I'm just, at the info desk, maybe taking complaints from people, right? Those efforts helps make a difference. And you just don't always know what difference you made. But if you try, you've made a difference for somebody. So I guess the last point I want to make today is also remember that any seed planted, and we've talked a lot about that, must also be nurtured to grow. And we must nurture others, but you know what? We also need to nurture ourselves. Many of us are really good at nurturing others, but often forget to think about ourselves and what do we need. The seeds that have been planted and what we're doing, how do we nurture ourselves as well? And often when you plant a seed and you nurture it, that often can come back, to planting a seed for yourself and nurturing you. To me, it's a cyclical kind of thing. And the last example I'll give will be a personal example. So when I was director of the Black African American Culture Center, I was also working on my PhD in sociology. And one of the things you need to do once you finish your coursework, when you get a PhD, is you have to do these tests and things to make sure you learn something. For me, it was like the 7 years it took me to get my PhD because I was working full-time and had 3 young children. And so for us, you had to take 2 tests. And you didn't know what the test was going to be. You had to study everything you knew that you ever learned in the 7 years that you were in the program. And you had to go in and literally take a handwritten test for 4 hours. Or it could take you up to 6 hours. So there was one in one area, and I did that one, and it was great. I understood that. I did fine in it. Then I had another one I had to take, which more was around methods and stuff, and that wasn't my strong suit. And so I ended up not passing it. And the rule was you could only take it twice. And if you didn't pass it in the second time, you get kicked out of the program. And I remember being devastated because school was my jam. I never failed anything in school. As I tell my kids this, they were like, "Mom, you were the kid that nobody liked in school." I always did my homework. I always had things turned in on time. I was kind of a teacher's pet a little bit. Okay, I'll admit that. But I loved school. I loved everything. I always did my homework. Teacher needed something, I'd do it, I was the person that, even in college, loved the first week of school. Just before school started, I was the one that got my books, because back then, you had to get books. And they were expensive back then, too, I just want to say. But I got my books, and I looked over them and tried to see what I was going to learn for each class, and I got my syllabus, and, I was that kind of student. And now, just as an aside, too, sometimes when you plant seeds, like I did with my kids, that didn't go for them. They were like, "No, we're not doing that." But I love school, so it was the first thing I ever failed in education my entire life. So I was just devastated. And I didn't tell anybody because I was embarrassed. Here I was, a director, and in this program, and I failed one of my comp tests. I had decided that maybe I didn't want to take it again because I was scared to be kicked out of the program. And so I had kind of made a decision that I was just going to get into another program that I knew I could do well in. I got into sociology. I'd never had an undergraduate sociology course. When I decided to get a PhD, I thought, well, I've done education, that my undergrad and grad, so let me do something different that has to do with the work I do, which sociology was that. So anyway, I was working with one of my students who worked in the office. He was one of the head students. did a lot of work for me. And we were working on something, and he just knew something was up because we worked closely together. He goes, "What's wrong with you? You just don't seem to be yourself." So I said, "Don't tell anybody, but I'm going to tell you that I failed my comp test. So I think I'm going to leave the PhD program." And I remember him looking at me and saying, "Well, you could take it again?" And I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Then why aren't you going to take it again?" I said, "Well, because I don't know. I lost my confidence." And it's like, I'm not going to do it. And he goes, "Well, you're a hypocrite." Now, we were really close. And he was a student that often would say he would say things like that. But I was like, what? I mean, first you were I'm sorry that happened. How are you feeling? And then he came up, "Well, you're a hypocrite." And I was like, "What? Excuse me? You need to explain that one." And he said, "All you do for every student that comes into the office, you always tell them whenever they fail anything or not doing well, you're the first person to say, then what are you going to do about it? How are you going to do it better?" He goes, "You even ask people when they get C's, well, was that the best you could do? Because you know a C is average. Now, if that's the best you could do, because the class you're taking, that's fine, you passed it. But if it wasn't, and because a lot of times I knew that wasn't the best they could do, because I know what other stuff they were doing instead of just studying." He said, "You will not do that. You never let us do that. So why would you do that?" That's what I mean by you being a hypocrite. You must take that test again. You owe it to yourself, but you owe it to the rest of us. Now, my husband had told me that I should retake the test too, but I didn't pay any attention to him. This was a student that had said to me, "Here's what you do for all of us. Here's how you raise us to be better. Here's how you challenge us to not give up and to believe in ourselves. And yet you're gonna quit?" He goes, "No, you're not." And I said, "Oh, well, that was a good point. I hadn't thought about that." And I said, "Well, I'm gonna think about it." He goes, "No, you're not." He goes, "You're gonna take that test again. I'm studying for my LSAT. We're gonna figure out what times, and we're gonna study together. You're gonna study your stuff, I'm gonna study my stuff. You're gonna take that test again, and you're gonna pass it." That was a student, and I would not have my PhD today if it wasn't for him. That's powerful. That's a seed. That's nurturing, that's full circle, right? And we're still close today because of that. So it's really important then, to understand that nurturing piece. And some ideas about how to nurture others as you plant that seed is encourage people, Give grace for those that are trying but may need some forgiveness and extra support. Maybe some more education and resources when they misstep. Because you know what, y'all? All of us misstep sometime. All of us need grace sometime. We also need to be challenged, as I was, to continue your growth. But how can we do that? We need to listen more sometimes. And give people a chance to hear them out and see what ways you can help them. And sometimes nurturing means stepping back too and letting them bloom on their own. As a parent, especially as a parent of adult kids, you all are challenging. It's adult kids, right? It's letting them do that. That's hard sometimes. If you have siblings, younger siblings, that you want them to do things a certain way and then they all of a sudden now grown up and act like they know more than you do, yeah. When do you let that happen? Because they are going to do things differently. Even when you plant the seed, it may bloom differently, but it still blooms. Now, the most important nurturing, however, is how do you nurture yourself? Be proud of yourself when you meet your goals. Because often we don't do that. It's good to be self-critical so that you can always get better. But it's also okay sometimes to say, "Oh, wow, I did that." Right, I did that. Now, you don't have to brag about it to everybody and put it all over, step check and all that. But internally say, I did well, and that's okay, right? I'm glad that I did well. Recognize when you need to give yourself grace. Often, we're really hard on ourselves, so sometimes we have to remember, it's okay if I didn't quite do what I wanted to do, if I make a mistake, as long as I know I want to continue to grow, I need to get past that. Be that lifelong learner that Emily talked about earlier. Ask for support when you need it. Sometimes the people who nurture the most don't ever want anybody to nurture them, right? That would be me. That is some of you all. Like, no, let people nurture you. It's good for them and it's good for you. And ask for help when you need it. So, and reward yourself when you do well. And I know sometimes people say, I always ask students, how do you reward yourself if you do well on this test? Well, it's a good reward that I'm just doing well for my family and I'm representing. I'm like, no. Do you go get some ice cream? Do you just take a walk? Like, those are important things to do. You need to reward yourself. That keeps you going. That keeps you motivated. And find your joy. Life is hard. The world is a freaking mess right now, right? We all know that. And you can get stuck in that. But as you get older, and older people used to tell me this, and I know y'all do this too, that's that old person, they're always saying that stuff. But life goes fast, right? And as far as we know, you only live it once. So you need to find joy in your life and in your journey. You can still be dedicated, you can be an activist, you can be an advocate, you can do all those things, but you also need to learn to love yourself and to learn to love who you are and what you do. That's the seed. If you do all that, you can help make the world better for yourself, for others, and then find enjoyment and fulfillment in the journey, okay? So, when we are able to nurture ourselves, as I hope you have done today, as participants in this amazing SHAPE conference, hopefully you now have the energy, desire, the knowledge to plant new seeds and nurture others to shape a better tomorrow. It's all of our responsibility to do that. So thank you for allowing me to speak to you today and letting me share this whole SHAPE experience. It's been great, and I continue to have hope for the future, for tomorrow, because of all of you. Thank you.
Vice President Hughes, Blanche, thank you so much. So many of the words really struck me in terms of thinking about our opportunities as employees of the Lory Student Center. That, we started and kicked off this day with our principles of communities, amongst other things, of integrity, respect, service, and social justice, and we know that that is not an end point that we have reached. I like to think of them as mini invitations every day, right? So how do we, through the acknowledgement or seeing someone at the info desk, to our environmental service staff, taking care of the building for us, along with operations, to getting involved and finding passion within a student, the variety of things that we do are invitations every day to live those principles of community. And we know those seeds that you are planting, and I know you're like, oh my gosh, if you remember anything from the from the conference, you're gonna remember the theme of this conference, right? But we want it to hit home, right? Because change is slow. And we want it to be slow if it's sustainable, right? Because anything that's done in a day can be undone in the same amount of time. And so the investment and the growth in some of those seeds that you water, they're not gonna flourish, right? Like Nupama said. But then some of them will flourish in the ways that you didn't anticipate, like the conversation with Dr. Hughes and the student. And we hope here in the community that you provide for other people that you also have that community here. that you have that accountability buddy or that someone, be it a supervisor or a colleague or a friend or a mentor, who will connect with you, right? So maybe we can all be like the aspen grove, right? Do you know the aspen grove? They're all connected by the root system, but show up individually. Because we know that you will leave here, be it now or later, or at some point, be it retirement, or be it for whatever next chapter is. And we want you to consider your seeds. We want you to think about the seeds that you are planting, not just at this conference, right? But what is coming next for you? And that might be tonight, right? That might be as far as forward as you are looking. That thing that you need that's due next week. That might be this semester, what you want to get out of it this semester. Maybe you are studying for the LSAT. Maybe you are looking into graduate study applications. Whatever that might be, I want you to get into that Mentimeter one more time. And I want you to really just take a moment. And I think the beautiful thing about anonymity, right? Because Mentimeter is all anonymous. You can put whatever you want up there. And the challenge is that when you put it out there, you are much more likely to succeed with it, right? When you put it out there, when you put up on this visible, that there might be a seed that you want to water after the conference. And it doesn't have to be about the conference, but is that a class that you want to do well in? Is that a relationship you want to reinvigorate within your family or your friend circle? Is that applying for that job or going out for that supervisor or shift manager position? Can I get my scrollers to help me out? So I just want you to take in what's coming through. That this is us, supporting my staff, getting good grades, self-care, sustainability, focus on passions and putting my all into them, friendships, gym time, community engagement, shifting priorities. Ace that LSAT, yes. My health, self-love, a cat. Confidence within myself, my ability to network and meet more people, time management, finishing my degree, get a job. Private equity firm, fantastic. So as these are scrolling and you're taking them in, know that represents us, right? This is our aspen grove. These are our roots that can connect and hopefully germinate to have that change that might be slow. And it might feel like you're going backwards sometimes before being able to go forward, and that's okay. That we hopefully have a long life in front of us, but as Blanche said, we get one. And so what are we doing with this one beautiful life? So I want you now to do that check under your chairs or the chairs around you. At every table, hold it up if you've got it. All right, we've got some people. Hold it up if you've got it. All right, hold on. Okay. Let's see them, raise them high. If you have one of those, you get to make a choice, right? You have first dibs on the plant on your table. You get to take them. You get to gift them to someone who's been a seed in your life. You get to invest in yourself. Whatever you do, this is your plant. You may baby it. You can invest in it. I'm hearing a lot of energy. I think the plants were the biggest success of this whole thing. I'm not gonna lie. People are storming out. They're pissed. Okay. So fret not. Those are not the only ones. And while yes, these plants have started already, they have maybe a jump start. We do have a parting gift for you on the way out. Now, our ask and the integrity, right, the invitation to integrity, inclusion, integrity, respect, service, and social justice, is that we have asks around this, right? So take that seed as you come out. Take that parting gift by doing the follow-up assessment. Now, the assessment and the feedback that you give us, those are seeds that we can plant for the conference in the future. It is seeds and the feedback. I promise, Abby went through every single assessment to make this the best one we could do for you, and then want it to be even better the next time. So when I put the QR code up, we're gonna end in about 2 minutes. And so that means that you have 15 minutes to either make those connections, network, to do those times. We want you also to think about the seeds of involvement, right? So we have 4 tabling locations that are right outside where the registration tables were. And we have our RAM events, our career center, Slice, and our LSE governing board. They talk to you about the volunteer opportunity at the beginning of the conference, and we want to provide an opportunity for you to get involved in a variety of ways in the LSE. So visit the tables for more information. And water your seeds to shape tomorrow, right? That is our third ask, and whatever that looks like. We can't thank you enough for the time and energy that you have put into this conference. Thank you for being here. Thank you for the energy, and thank you for being a part of it all. At this time, I'm going to put up, there it is.
Oh, thank you, Emily.
Oh, thank you, Lauren. Oh, thank you. Here's the survey for the shape. Those are the seeds that you can plant for tomorrow. So we're going to crank up the music. I'm going to get off the stage. You're going to take your parting gift after you've taken the assessment, visit the tables, and the rest of your day is yours. Thank you very, very much.